I'm going to invite us. We've got a couple minutes for folks to settle and find the room. So in the meantime, please, again, in chat, share who you are, where you are, and what hope you have for this breakout session, or one excitement or cheer. And then we're going to wait for some settling until I get the cue that we can begin. And Krysta and Will, you'll go first, then we'll move to Jose, and then we'll move to Lana. Okay, let's get started, because why not? And then we'll rock and roll. I'm just checking to make sure that Stephen is telling me that I'm doing the right things that I'm supposed to be doing. Okay. I'm going to say a warm welcome to room 2, round 2, 222. My name is Launa-Rae, if we haven't met yet. I'm the School Crisis Recovery and Renewal Project Director. And you are in this room because you want to hear Krysta and Will and Jose and Lana's Capstone Leadership Fellowship Capstone presentations. I warned you all at the beginning, we're very loquacious in this project. So the way that it's going to roll and feel is that Will and Krysta will go first, then Jose, then Lana, and then we'll have time to discuss. And I want to really strongly welcome everyone in chat to give each other descriptive praise, not just great job, but like when you said that, it really here, or ooh, say that again, because it's a little nervy to present. So we want to lower the nervies. Krysta and Will, how do you feel? Ready to go? Okay, cool. My other gentle reminder to Krysta, Will, Jose, and Lana is to just do a 1-sentence overview of who you are, even though I know you're about to do that right now. So Krysta and Will sitting together. It's, oh, sorry, one more thing. Do you want me to give you a 2-minute or a 5-minute or a 1 minute?
2-minute. I think 2-minute would be good.
Great. Okay.
All right, thank you. So hello, everyone. My name is Krysta Broeker. With me is William DeSantis, and we actually work together. So we are both mental health educators in Onondaga County. We work for Contact Community Services. And a lot of what we do is obviously in schools. So we provide a ton of suicide prevention, intervention tools, and postvention programming. We use obviously all evidence-based practices, but it seems more and more that our jobs have been focusing this year, especially on that postvention piece. In Onondaga County in New York State, this year alone, it seems like we have been losing people inside of schools, outside of schools. It has just been tragedy after tragedy. So that being said, we were very excited to join this fellowship and to learn more about SCRR for a multitude of reasons, but one of those being that main point that Leora brought up in our little welcome, where we talked about the 4 R's. So those being, again, readiness, response, recovery, and renewal. When Will and I first started this fellowship and throughout the year, we realized that we felt like we had a firm grasp on those first 2 R's. So we felt good to go going into buildings, making sure that they had a plan in place should they face some sort of crisis or tragedy. When it came to the response, not only were we there to support schools, but we would actually go in and make sure that, you know, things were going according to plan as much as possible, but to, again, readjust whenever possible. But we realized through all of this loss throughout the year that it seemed like there was no time for us to really get to that recovery point, and let alone the renewal part, right? We realized that there was something missing in our work. We were not allowing students or staff those spaces to really come together and grieve. As we know, grief does not end after that first 72 hours after a tragedy where we might be in the building supporting them. It continues. And so we were left with this lingering question: how can we better support our staff and our youth in these buildings across the county in their individual journeys when it comes to grieving? So not just a month after a loss, but 6 months or a year after. Leora, if you could go to the next slide, please. So what we came up with was a presentation of sorts. we wanted to create an opportunity for school staff to really begin this work. We wanted to empower them to not only learn about how they can provide this safe space for their students, for their kids that they work with, but to also create that container for themselves, to learn about their own grief, to learn about their own healing needs, and to support that process throughout the presentation. So this presentation, we've included slides that are actually a part of it. It really covers 3 domains. The first one being an overview of grief. What is it? What does it look like? The second domain being the art and the impact of stories being told. And then the third domain is the process and implementation of restorative circles. So we focused a lot, again, on this idea of storytelling and restorative circles to do that.
Yep. And so before we move to the next slide, when we're looking at these domains, in particular at grief, I feel this presentation is very successful, and we really marinate in defining that and describing that, not in our adult voices, but really involving youth voices in that process. I recently saw a description of grief as being love with no place to go. And I think when we look at things in those terms and not necessarily a formal definition, it really illustrates just the complexity and really the heartbreak that's associated with grief. Leora, if you could switch to our next slide. So stories illuminate the past, and they help us come to terms with the present, and ideally generate a curiosity for the future, envisioning a future where maybe one that feels less painful, right? So when we looked at the 3-phase trauma framework that Leora presented, thinking about that and thinking about that middle piece of it. And then we look at circles, and circles are one of the oldest forms of group process. Indigenous and First Peoples cultures from around the world continue to use circle process to facilitate community conversations about important subjects. So as crisis leaders, we realize that we may have previously worried a little too much about the safety in terms of there being expression of feelings surrounding grief. That was coming from a good place of wanting to triage and support our vulnerable students, especially through the lenses of a school environment. But we cannot forbid human reaction. So a turning point for us during the fellowship was when Dr. Erica Felix from the University of California in Santa Barbara, she was talking about some really high impact, unimaginable experiences that they had experienced together. And she said, we don't want to pathologize what is a human reaction to tragedy. And as that was said, in my work, we were in that second R of response, having just lost a student. And that reminder was so profound. And it really, I remember the following day, Krysta and I were setting up care stations together and just really using that sort of as our mantra when heartbroken students, were coming in and receiving supports. Youth and adults alike need room to breathe and express their natural reactions to what's happened in their lives. And adults are not excluded from that. Although this is all about elevating student voices, but part of how we do that is through relationships and connections with adults. So this really began our journey to provide a safe place for us to allow grief, allow feelings, and allow healings beyond those first 72 hours of a crisis in that response phase. So I do want to play for you a video here that I collaborated with our students at the high school that I work at, that I serve the district, and they're loss survivors. And I pitched them, I shared with them this poem and just kind of shared my adult vision of what I would like to see. And I'm going to let our students, kind of show you what they did with that.
Okay, I'm gonna play video and
Okay,
someone in the chat is going to tell me if the sound works or not, and then if it doesn't work, I'm gonna try something different.
okay. No sound.
Up and someone,
A stranger.
Got you strapped.
The sadness. It's just so hard to explain.
imagine waking up and someone,
A stranger.
Got you strapped down.
Got pliers shoved into your mouth.
Gripping a tooth. Somewhere in the back.
One of the big, important ones, and rips it out.
Imagine the knocking on our head. The pressure pushing through your ears.
The blood pooling.
But the worst part, the absolute worst part,
is the constant slipping of your tongue into the new empty space where you know a tooth's supposed to be, but it ain't no more.
You know, so for a 40-second video, I just find that to be so powerful in its ability to make a distinction between grief and trauma and show where they intersect. And I do want to note that is, for those that may not be familiar, From a Long Way Down, the entire story is told in verse. The author is Jason Reynolds, and each and every page of that book just flows with the same, is just very impactful. And what is the word I'm looking for, Krysta?
I don't know.
It just harmony, right? It was just harmonious. So I think that is a step in the right direction. And ideally, this presentation will be something that's turnkey, that doesn't necessarily require William DeSantis and Krysta Broeker to facilitate it. And we're really happy to see when we're looking for their implementation, where it goes and what it becomes. So that is our piece.
Beautiful. Thank you, Krysta and Will. Before I'm gonna give Jose, this is your 1 minute shakeout before Jose comes up. But I want to invite folks in chat to share a congratulations or a resonance or something that strikes you. And Krysta and Will, also inviting you, if there's one sentence that you wanted to say that you forgot to say, this is the moment. Not the only moment, but this is a moment.
Sorry. Yeah. So we said that's a lot of pressure, Leora.
I'm that's my job. Yeah.
No, really. Thank you.
Okay. Great. Okay, Jose, we're gonna turn to you. Welcome to Jose, who's going to share what is my superpower. And I did just see Roberto Rivera come in to our network of practice, so hopefully he also got to room 2 so he can witness you, Jose. And I'm gonna pass the mic to you if you can turn it back to me at around 51, minute 51.
All right, we ready?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, so hello everyone. My name is Jose Rodriguez. I am a dean of one of the deans of restorative practices at Roosevelt High School in Chicago, Albany Park neighborhood. I would like to share a little bit a story behind the vision of what is my superpower, which was a 2-day healing and leadership workshop that 10 to 12 students participated in. And the story that I want to share is an experience that I had about a year ago when I was a member of the Surge Institute Fellowship. I was part of the cohort, and it was a life-changing experience for me because through that cohort, I was able to identify what my superpower is because other people saw that in me, and they saw what my superpower is leading with love and speaking from the heart. And because of that, I became my authentic self and more courageous in the spaces I lead. I also want to share from my perspective what a superpower means. And for me, it is love put into action, but combining love with power to get to your purpose. So I was using my superpower to get to the purpose of helping this group of students begin their healing journey. The essential question for me behind this project is how do students of color, Black and brown youth, heal from the harm of the educational system, the harm and grief caused by an educational system that is rooted in white supremacy, a system that wasn't designed for them to thrive, a system that has caused grief due to the loss of self-love, loss of hope, loss of freedom, and loss of dreaming. And as a result, we see our youth causing harm to themselves and to others. So how do we help them? How do we help them heal from this? So the question you see on the slide comes from Roberto's poem. How do they learn to turn the flame of their pain into a fire that heals themselves and others? Meeting Roberto was the moment when things started to coming together for me. Roberto did one of our sessions and he recited his poem Sparks. And I was like, this is it. I was looking for something that the students can connect with in regards to them having a better understanding what it means when you say the system has harmed you, and when you tell them that the energy that you're using is harming yourself and it's harming others. I also want to share what Roberto means by sparks. So sparks are traumatic events. For example, police harassment, being abandoned by your parent, being shamed by a teacher. And these sparks over time destroy your spirit, and then that anger starts to build up. So that's the flame. And the fire, that flame, that fire is the anger that is expressed. So behaviors that you see from young people, such as cutting class or being in defense mode, fighting or doing drugs, that's what that fire is. So we come again to that question, how do you make the switch and turn that flame of pain into a superpower that helps you heal and empower yourself to transform the system that had failed you? I chose this particular group because one, I just care about students. That's just in my nature. It was a mix of students that if you were to spend time with them, you would see a loss of hope. And then some that were in the process of regaining that hope. So it was pretty much freshmen and sophomores. And I saw things in them that they didn't see themselves until they did this workshop. Again, the vision was, thinking about Roberto coming in, but I really wanted them to experience something transformative. So I had the idea of doing a full day, 2-week workshop. I don't know if you guys have the agenda and the copy of the poem, but on that agenda, you'll see that they sacrificed 2 Saturdays to be part of this. I would like to give you an idea of what that looked like. So it started off with a beautiful grounding session led by a good friend of mine, by Jose Rico, who gave us the sage and these affirmation cards and guided us through some meditation. Roberto did his thing with the poem, and students were so connected and so engaged. They really resonated with his sparks and his fire. And there was one part of the poem after we reflected on it that stood out to them. And that was, a coward lets his fire burn everything like coal, but real power is demonstrated when your fire is controlled. After that, we transitioned over to Marayala, who just happens to be my wife. She did the art therapy session, and her vision behind it was, why don't we create some shields in the shape of freedom fists, hearts, eyes, stars, and there was another one. But within the shield are collages that represent the superpowers that the students were able to identify after hearing Roberto's poem. From that, we transitioned over to Chicago Freedom School, who facilitated these amazing talking circles and activities for students to have their voices heard, as well as learn about the root causes of systemic oppression and tools that they can use to change things here at Roosevelt, as well as in the community. At the end of the day, the feedback that I got from the student was all on, I got hugs, smiles. They told me it wasn't what I expected. When are we going to do this again? And that it was different. And the cool thing about it was that they felt everything connected, everything from the grounding session. So there was a nice flow. I was very intentional with creating a space that combined love and power. And I wanted to share something that I missed. Hold on one second. So a student of mine told Roberto this, or wrote this about the poem. The poem hit me like nothing before. When he was talking about his life and the poem, it made me imagine about my life and the spark that happens to me. And it made me realize that I'm not alone and that everyone learns in different ways. So as I was saying, this meant a lot to me, as much as it meant for the students. It ignited my flame of love, because as a dean, it can be very overwhelming, and students don't get to see the real side of me. And students said that they saw a different Mr. Rodriguez, and that was confirmed by what this student wrote. I joined the workshop due to me being invited and wanting to change. Something I got out of the workshop is my superpower, which is helping people. Another thing I got out of it is meeting my dean outside of school and getting to know the real him, and I appreciate him for that. So that was very special for me. These are the shields that the students created, identifying their superpowers, such as making others feel heard, seeing things differently, being a good listener, and caring about others. The question that I want to end with is, how do we continue to create more spaces that bring joy and are rooted in love? I need to continue to make this happen. If I don't, I feel like I'm going to be failing this group of students and the school community. And to be straight up, if it wasn't for this stipend, this would not have happened. And that makes me question, what are the things that we're investing our money in when it comes to our young folks? And then just ending with just my speaking from the heart thoughts is, it's really, to me, it's not that difficult. To me, it's about showing love to our young people and bringing more moments of joy. So thank you.
How beautiful, how beautiful, how beautiful. I'm just seeing Jose and Mara and Roberto in the room as your cheer, and also just wanting to say a verbal thank you to the three of you who joined Jose in this vision, to inviting young people to grapple and explore their inner shields and their outer shields and witness each other. And Jose, I'm just grateful. I want to say, I hope it's okay that I'm offering this, but when Jose joined the SCRR fellowship, he was like, what is this thing that I've been invited to join? What is this grief and trauma thing? Like, I don't do crisis work, I'm a restorer. And Jose, the way that you have found the intersections of the interhealing work of yourself to model it and mirror it so that young people see that it's an ongoing practice to witness ourselves, is so profound. So thank you for being our teacher and their teacher and the teacher of this moment. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Really gonna welcome you in chat, as you're already doing, to provide descriptive praise for Jose and also Mara and also Roberto and all of these young folks who are allowing us to learn from them in this moment. And also gonna say, for both Will, Krysta, and Jose, like, yeah, I mean, 10 minutes, you were just like on it, exactly to the T. So like, I mean, amazing gift, beautiful. Okay. Inviting everyone in exhale. We're in our last one of these three, and then we get to be in discussion. So we just went from New York to Chicago, and now we're going up to Canada. So we're going up to Canada, but then kind of to France, and then back again. So Lana, I turn it to you, and your time will end 2 minutes after the hour.
Okay. Thank you, Leora. And thank you for joining me here to present my capstone presentation. I have script too, but obviously I'm not going to look at it because it's gonna interrupt you. So also, I just want a big shout out to Leora and her team. Like, if it wasn't for me finding the SCRR, I wouldn't be here. So it really helped moving me from recovery to renewal. And I'm going to be with it. I'll just let them come, because I know if I acknowledge in my nervous system that I'm having tears, It will pass. So the prism effect. I chatted with, so I'm Lana, I'm from Edmonton, Alberta. It's we're getting some cold weather, which we're hoping will bring rain because we are in the middle of a lot of fires, believe it or not, up north. It's crazy. I came up with the prism effect when I was thinking about how light is refracted through a prism, and how when you pick up a prism, there are all the different perspectives that you can look at. And I came to this work as a PhD candidate, student first, now candidate, studying the ethics of care, trauma, grief after a school crisis. So my personal and professional life collided on July 14th, 2016, when I was abroad with 5 students from my university. I was there as faculty evaluating the program. And on the evening of July 14th, which is Bastille Day, a big celebration for the French people, a terrorist drove a 20-ton truck down the Promenade des Anglais, killing 86 people, injuring 458, and psychologically wounded thousands more. And 3 of the students from the program were lost their lives that night, and 1 of them was from my university. So my context really is around staying there for 6 days afterward. My university did not send a senior administrator down, and I chose not to leave because the identification of my 1 student, there was a big process for it, and subsequently the other students stayed too. And what's really interesting for me is, you know, going through this labyrinth and then picking up this prism, if you will, and looking at it from different perspectives, is there is the theory behind it, there's the practice behind it, and then there's what was actually done. So I've been coming to grips with how that all played out. And it took me some time to get to what helped, what harmed with the students, with the university, and with myself. So with soft hands and lots of witnessing and listening, and lots of mentoring by Leora, I decided to put on my brave hat and my courageous hat and pants and connect with the students who I am in connection with, but we've never talked deeply about this topic in this way. And they all said, Lana, you did so much for us. We want to be there for you to help you with whatever you can. And just as a preface, when I got back to my university, I was called by the provost, I was called by the president to meet with them, and then there was never any support offered. And my own colleagues had no clue how to talk to me. And eventually I was very isolated, and in my office often with the students, counseling them and supporting them, even though that's not my area of expertise. I taught business management and entrepreneurship. Next slide. So I did the following one of the projects from the School Crisis Recovery in Newell. I was like really curious. So what helped and what harmed, but more so what is needed. And the narrative that I've heard from the university that I'm currently at is, and I've heard it here today, is we're really good at the preparation and immediate response, but the human factor of crisis response in the aftermath is really absent. And a lot of the students are taken through and re-traumatized, particularly when you are away for an event, such as our unique event and another one that happened up north with the University of Alberta, isolating 8 to 10 students deep north when their faculty member was killed. So I just have to make my screen a little larger. So I 3 different sessions. The what is a crisis are 2 different perspectives, one from the students and one from administration. And the biggest difference is administration really looks at negative possible consequences, not just about life and the mobilization of resources and consequences, but the financial and the reputation. When I talked to the provost in this interview, he, for the first time, let me know that the board was only concerned with what was Leora, what was the word? Culpability? Were they culpable? And they didn't show any concern any other way. It was really, really sad. What helped for the students, actually, I'll start with the bottom. What harmed? No follow-up during the fall term by the university, no acknowledgement that they went through something awful while abroad. The university memorial was really weird, and I asked the provost that too, and he just said it was incredibly sad, so I don't think that was really well thought out. There was no check-ins by any person, perhaps except for by me. Through the year, we did go through some other student loss. There was a bomb threat during exams, and the students took it in their own hands and chose just not to be at school that day. The media was a big struggle, and I have a story around that I could write a whole memoir on, but that's not for today. And then with the provost, it was assuming everyone was fine. So because he was fine, and in recognition, though he was not there, he was at distance, that he was worried about jurisdictional boundaries, privacy laws, and liability. Again, students were wondering why nobody knew what was going on with them, particularly their professors, if they were coming in late and or just, not really coherent in the classroom. And there was no systems and resources for follow-up. They didn't want to go to trauma counseling. For me, it was, and as I've learned, it was there was no boundaries, and I've learned about boundaries since. The media was harassing, and the colleagues didn't know how to talk to me. And that I've heard over and over today, that some kind of communication on how to speak to people, what to say, what not to say, when big things happen is really important. And the students also brought out that even for their families, like where's the family support? So what helped when you're abroad, what helps is the sense of safety and stabilization. So I had a flat outside the dorm. We gathered there, and it wasn't just me, it was my own students. There were other students also. We stayed together, we ate together, we played together, we cried together. We jumped off cliffs together. I'm hesitant to say that. And we went to the memorials together because there were 3 memorials to attend. And the promenade was filled with thousands and thousands of people and flowers. It was a very deep place that was a juxtaposition to the terror and it's the celebration to the terror and to the quiet. I can let you read the rest. What was needed? So 8 years later, what was really interesting is they said, Lana, they call me Mama Bear. We've never talked about it deeply in this way, but we don't think we were ready. We heal in layers. And it's been so important that you gather us always on the 14th of July. And something had shifted. One of them actually cried. It was the first time he cried. He didn't think it actually impacted him. But I feel like I'm at my time, and I should probably leave this here. And if there's anything for questions, then I'm happy to answer them. Oh, great. The next stage, the now what, reimagining. So this is my invitation to all of you. How are these inclusive spaces for grief, recovery, and renewal created, but not just created, sustained? And how might liability be reframed and understood in times of crisis? Maybe not even just in times of crisis. And grief leadership. How is the capacity to care and act with compassion developed? And is this something that can be learned? Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lana. Thank you for, I want to acknowledge that Lana and I have been in deep discussion around confidentiality, privacy, what to share, how to share, and you have found such a delicate and discerned balance of sharing your own process and your students' voices while also respecting where they are in their process and the university. It's a hard art. So I'm so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're seeing from all 3 presentations, peer presentations, and I'm going to take our screen down so we can be in discussion, is the necessity and power of creating space, holding space, and processing over and over and over and over again, so that our young people and our community members can opt in when there's readiness into seeing themselves and each other in a new way. right? And there's one of our fellows, when we were talking about the working agreements for our fellowship, they came up with this adage, no one is frozen in time. And both Krysta, Will, Jose, and Lana, that is, you're living into that adage that we get to unthaw, unthaw with each other. I want to open it to folks in the room, both to provide Lana some celebration and affirmation of the work, and also if there are questions or comments that folks would like to raise, with the reminder that if you do share out loud, you are being recorded. And while questions might be formulating, and feel free to raise your hand in Zoom or let me know in chat, I have a question for the four of you that you can answer or not, which is, how did the process of your capstone project support your own internal renewal work? Go for it, Lana.
I can answer that. It helped me move from the third stage of recovery to renewal. And a lot of it was being witnessed, like telling my story. We heard about the power of storytelling, being witnessed, and normalizing my experience. I'm deep in academic research, and what I read over and over is women will experience this kind of trauma at a deeper level for several different reasons, but also that educators leave their jobs. And they leave their jobs, I think, because there is no witnessing and no place to process. So this work is so important. And, it really calls me to, it's the what's next for me, I think. So I'm so grateful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Lana.
I'd like to share. Like, as I mentioned, throughout a school day, there's moments of crisis that I'm responsible to respond to. And it can be overwhelming, and it can affect your overall mental well-being. And so the process of doing this was very joyful, and it brought me some healing, because it gave me an opportunity to do something that didn't require me to be in this dean role position. And I felt that that was something that I needed. Something that was missing. So the fact that I was able to do this and connect with my students in a different way, like I said, they saw me differently. There was even a joke, like my friend who provided the food knows me well since I was young, and he called me Jojo, which is my nickname. So them even knowing like my nickname and them saying it in the hall, it was just like a different connection and just a different experience for me that really brought me joy.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, I am very excited. Will and I have already been in talks in different schools and different areas in the community where we can implement this sort of training. And I'm excited to see how that goes. Because going into schools after something awful has happened and seeing, friends and loved ones of the student or staff member, whoever we've lost, in some of their heaviest moments, and then leaving while they're still in those heavy moments, it has an impact on me personally. You never see those next steps. You never see the future. You worry about them. You have all these thoughts and feelings, and they stay with you. And you don't get to see the beginning of that grieving process, or where they are, again, a month, 6 months, however far into their grieving journey. So I'm really looking forward to being able to help them process that however I can, but also just being able to witness and learn from them as well.
Will, did you want to add anything? It's okay if you don't.
No, I mean, I was just completely blown away by what Krysta said, and thinking of that, and thinking of the association, right, that students have with us, where they see me often in those moments, but this, I think, shines a different light on who I am as a person. It humanizes myself as well, and hopefully strengthens those relationships.
It makes me think of Lana's metaphor of us being prisms and prisms, and allowing ourselves to be seen in different ways by the young people that we work with and support. And that by, as I was saying after Jose, is like that by showing them that like, yes, we too have work to do. We too grieve, we too are messy. It allows that, it gives them permission, right? As you said, Jose, to dream or to reimagine themselves. It's really powerful work. Okay, we have a couple more minutes before we get sucked back into the main room, and someone will remind me to press stop recording before we do that. But I wanted to just pause to see if there are any other, either from other fellows in the room or other community members, either resonances or questions or ahas that folks have for the three rounds that we just heard.
I think there's so much, there's such deep wisdom and knowledge and experience that have come out of today. And I can't help but keep thinking about how this gets, maybe what I want is shared more widely, as there's such a deep network in the US for this work, and in my country right now, not so much. So that's where my thinking is how do I collaborate with some of these brilliant and heart-led leaders and bring change here too.